Okay, here we are, Unit 4, Exponents, and we'll have a day of scientific notation as well. So we've got an exponent is a number that tells us how many times the base number, that should say base number, will be multiplied in repeated multiplication. So here we are, the 4 is our base number, okay, and that 5 is called the exponent, okay. So we take 4 to the 5th power, meaning we're taking 4, not 4 times 5, but 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. So you notice we've got that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. All right, so now here we've got the number 7, and we're multiplying it times itself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That's our answer, 7 to the 6th power. You can use your calculator to find 7 to the 6th power. Right, now here, believe the parentheses are actually very, very important to keep because it means that we are including everything inside the parentheses, and we're going to multiply that. There are 2 of those. Now, the answer, if you have this, that is not correct because the negative drops and you're only taking 1 3/10 2 times. So that is not correct. You absolutely have to have the parentheses there. Okay, and then we've got variables here. So we're taking n and we're multiplying it 1, 2, 3, 4 times by itself. So we would say that n to the 4th power. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're taking 3 to the 9th power, taking it 9 times. All right. So let's fill out this table here. So this is called standard form. That's the way we say these numbers, 27, right? So expanded form, we're saying 3 times 3 times 3 actually equals 27. Okay, so if you were to ask me each week how many miles I run, and I tell you 3 times 3 times 3, you're gonna look at me and roll your eyes. I would say 27 miles a week. Okay, exponent form, we're saying that we're going to take 3 times itself 3 times. So that's 3 to the 3rd power. You can also say, instead of to the 3rd power, you could say it's cubed. So 3 cubed. It's another way to write it. Okay, here we've got 5 times 5 in expanded form. That's 25. In exponent form, we're taking 5 and we're taking it twice. 5 to the 2nd power, or 5 squared. All right, here we've got 3 to the 4th power. That means we're multiplying 3 by itself 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and let's see if we've got 3 times 3 is 9, and 3 times 3 is 9, and then 9 times 9 is 81. And we say this 3 to the 4th power. 4th power. Okay. Here we've got 11 squared. So you could say 11 squared or 11 to the 2nd power. To the 2nd power. Both are perfectly fine, but it's really important to know both ways. Okay, and that just means that we're taking 11 times 11, which is 121. Right, and I like this because the 11s are kind of fun when you start squaring and cubing because you've got the 2 1s and you're taking it 2 times, and that's what goes in the middle. So 121. 10 cubed. So again, it is really important to know what cubed means. And so if you think of a cube, the cube has 3 dimensions. It has a length, a width, and then it has a height. Okay, so a cube has 3 dimensions, so we're taking 10 cubed. So 10 times 10 times 10, 1, 2, 3 zeros will be on our answer for 1,000. Okay, so now we've got negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. You could also write this negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. What's being repeated here is the thing. and it's that negative. And so because the negative is being repeated over and over and over, we actually have to include the parentheses, because I'm going to tell you what, we've got 4 of them. That right there is wrong. Okay, because the 4 is only touching the 3, and it's not saying that the 3 is just going to tag along. If you want the negative to tag along, you have to include it in parentheses. Now this is -3 to the 4th power. Okay, and you're going to have the same answer as this, only because, let me erase this here. Your negatives cancel out there. So negative times a negative is a positive. A negative times a negative is a positive, and that's 81 still, right? And we would say -3 to the 4th power. -3. All right, so now we want to consider this idea down here. So we're comparing parentheses, so the -3 is in parentheses to the 4th power, and then we are considering this. It's -3, and it's to the 4th power, but there's no parentheses on this one. So I always ask, what is the exponent touching? So if we look at this first one, the exponent touching the parentheses, right? So if it's touching the parentheses, that means absolutely everything inside that parentheses gets taken 4 times. That's why we're taking -3 times -3 times -3 times -3. You don't have to include the parentheses when you do that. Like I might even write it like this. But notice that I am, including the negative on all of those. Okay, right here, what is the 4 touching? It's not touching parentheses, it's only touching the number 3, which means it's saying, hey, number 3, you were going to go 4 times, and that negative just drops. So we've got -3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So that negative is going to eventually drop. So we've already figured out that this is 81, right? That negative is going to drop. And then our final answer, 9 times 9, is -81. Because that negative just kind of drops. Over here, it's not dropping, it's included. So these negatives, 2 negatives cancel out, 2 negatives cancel out, and that's why it's a positive answer. So these actually make a big difference. And there's actually a different way to say the both of those. This is actually -3 to the 4th power, because you're taking all of -3 to the 4th power. This, however, is not -3 to the 4th power, because you're not taking -3 that many times. You're taking 3 to the 4th power, but you're making it opposite. So you call this the opposite of 3 to the 4th power. Now I know that's crazy, but that's the way it is. All right, so here we go. We've got expanded form again. Here we go. And exponent form. How many times are we taking that x? 1, 2, 3, 4. X to the 4th power. And in word form, it is just, x to the 4th power. And right here, we've got y to the 3rd power, or, remember how we say the other way? Y cubed. Okay. And then this is just y, 1, 2, 3. And right here, we are taking the negative ends. Remember, negative n, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not correct, because what do I have to include? The parentheses. Okay, and this is -n to the 5th power. Okay, now this is different, because the negative is not included. So in expanded form, that negative is going to be sticking out. Okay, so we've got n 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But that negative is outside the parentheses. And we say this, the opposite of n to the 5th. All right. So here, what are we taking twice? Not just 2, but negative 2. So I've got to take negative 2, put it in parentheses. So we're going to write negative 2 squared, right? All right, here we go. So let's simplify some of these. We don't ever want to leave a number with an exponent and an answer. Now from here on out, you're always going to have pretty much a calculator, but anything squared and cubed, you should really know how to do without a calculator. So essentially we've got 4 squared, or 4 times 4, which is 16. Whichever way you write it first, I don't really care. Okay, and then y squared and a z. So this right there should actually be here with 16. Okay, so don't leave that 4 squared. Don't ever leave it something with a square, a number with a square, or a cube. All right, negative 5 cubed. And remember, we have to include those negatives because the negative is repeated. Okay, but here's the thing. We can actually solve this because this is something we're going to be doing this month, this unit. Okay, so negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. All right, now ready to think money? So think if you had quarters and you have 5 quarters. It's going to be $1.25, and a positive times a negative is a negative. So notice that when we have 3 negatives, you're going to have a negative answer. Okay, and that's actually what this is, because we kind of wrote that. And so we know that this right there is negative 125, and we're going to drop everything else. Plus 2 times 3. Now, I hope you didn't write negative 125 and then add the 2 to make that like negative 123 or 127 or negative 127 or something crazy like that. Because I know that you're following PERMDAS. And you're thinking, multiplication becomes before addition and subtraction. So you know you need to multiply those to get 6. So negative 125 plus 6, different signs differ. My negative is bigger. So we've got negative 119 there. All right, let's come on over here. So let's see, PERMDAS, parentheses. Can I do anything inside the parentheses? Absolutely. All right. So now we've got exponents. So before I can add, I need to take that exponent because that's what the E stands for. So 7 plus 4 squared, which is 16. Now I can do my last step of adding. And we've got 23 there. Okay, so here we go. They look similar, but they're not. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, what is the exponent touching? The 2 is touching the 4. Hey, 4, you're the only thing that goes twice. Okay, so this is negative 4 times 4. Negative 16. Here we've got, what is the 2 touching? The parentheses. So everything in the parentheses gets taken twice. Okay. So now we've got 20 minus 4 squared. So let's follow PEMDAS. We've got to take care of that exponent first. And so it's 20 minus, and that's inside the parentheses there, for minus 16. And over here, so let's start. Parentheses, yes, I can do something inside the parentheses first. And what is that 2 touching? It's touching the 4. So we've got 20. I'm going to keep those parentheses for a minute. That negative is going to drop while I take only 4 twice. All right, so now I've got 20 times negative 16. Let's take 16 times 20. Let's drop that 0. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 plus 1 is 3. So we've got 320. Now we've got a positive times a negative. So it's going to be a negative. All right, so now we've got some fractions here, but that's okay. We know what fractions are. And notice that these are also absolute value. Okay, so in the end, whatever our answer is, it's going to become positive, but that's not until the very end. Okay, things don't change positive to negatives to positive until the very, very end. We have one number in there. Okay, so I've got the 3 is touching the parentheses, so I've got to take everything in those parentheses, 3 times. So it means I'm taking negative 1/2 times negative 1/2 times negative 1/2. Well, I know how to do that. We're just multiplying 1 times 1 times 1 and 2 times 2 times 2. Let's see, 2 negatives cancel out, and that stays negative. Okay, so I'm going to drop those absolute values so that I remember. I'm going to write that division sign because we're dividing. And now I've got 1/3. Let's do this work right here. 1/3 times 1/3. Luckily, there's no negatives around that. So I've got to take that twice. 1 times 1 and 3 times 3. Don't write 6. Okay, so now we've got dividing and fractions. Gosh, we don't divide by fractions. We multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to take negative 1/8 times 9/1. And we've got the absolute value of 1 times 9 and 8 times 1. And it is a negative because a negative times a positive, but we want the positive of that answer. All right. And here we go. So let's stick with the parentheses. So let's see what we can all do inside the parentheses here. Inside the parentheses, let's see, I've got subtraction and exponent. Well, exponent comes next. So we're going to do the exponent. Okay, so I'm going to drop everything else. I've got to drop these absolute value lines. 1/2, 7 minus, let's take care of that exponent, 5 cubed. We've done that a few times up there on letter F. It's 125. Okay, still not done with the parentheses, so let's do that. Drop that absolute value sign, drop that. I'm going to keep the parentheses because we are multiplying there. Let's see, 7 minus 125. Well, these are different signs, and my negative is much, much bigger. So we're going to have a negative 118. Don't forget, we're going to take the absolute value of that. Our answer is going to end up positive at the end. All right, so now we want to take half of 118. So we're going to take 118 and divide it by 2. So 2 goes into 11 5 times. Subtract, get 1, bring down my 8. 2 goes into 18 9 times. So it ends up being a positive times a negative is negative 59, but we take the absolute value, so it ends up being 59. Fabulous.